Hello, I'm Robin Gibson, and this is the Harvard House Money Morsel. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell to get a notification of when we release a new video. It's Fan Friday. We're filming on Friday, the start of the World Cup, and hopefully France are going to give New Zealand a good hiding this evening. But you will know before you even watch this. I'm sitting today with Willie Pelser. Welcome, Willie.
Thank you.
So, Willie, this week we had a release of widely anticipated GDP numbers. Can you tell us what the news was and why it was widely anticipated?
Okay. Robin, widely anticipated because we were waiting for the second quarter GDP number, and the second quarter being the time that we had extensive load shedding, and people were saying, we can't do business. So we wanted to see from these numbers actually how bad the economy is doing relative to the load shedding. So it was actually a surprise to some extent. It came out at 0.6% growth if we look at it relative to the previous quarter. And then, being an economist and statistics, there's various ways of looking at it. So if we look at the same quarter last year, then the number is actually a 1.6% GDP growth number. And if you look at the whole 6 months relative to the previous 6 months of the same year, it's actually up 0.9%. So we get to conceptually a number of around 1%. So good from that perspective, but not what we really want. We want higher than that. But inside the number, for me or for us, from a South African perspective, we want to see where is the growth coming from. So just delving through the number itself, it's interesting to see that the consumer is now making up 65% of the GDP pie in the sense of what we do and what we spend on. Now one can argue, that's the consumer is doing well. We have to look at it relative to, are we spending enough? How's our imports, exports, and that type of thing doing? So if I delve into the fixed capital formation or investment in the economy, we were also surprised because that's up sort of 3.4%, and to some extent expected if one really look at it. We've been investing in alternatives. Yes. So whether it's wind farms or solar, and that needs to come from somewhere. And if I listen to some of the feedback from a company like Bitvest and so on, they're talking about at grassroots level, spending are happening from an infrastructure perspective because they sell stuff there. Rabex is doing stuff, etc. So that's a positive in the sense there's momentum there. If we go to the consumer, same argument. We can look at how people are spending, how they're turning the cents around as to spend, and it's interesting. We still eat at restaurants, we still eat out. So expected because of the load shedding. So and then as we go down in these sort of brackets of where people spend, you can see the so-called spare cash is we need to eat. So a little bit less on nice to haves and a little bit less on the durable stuff. But funny enough, we still like to dress nicely. So that's holding up shoes, cosmetics, and that type of thing. So.
Awesome. And Willie, now, obviously from a South African point of view, the load shedding, sort of we've gone back to stage 6. We've seen a sort of corresponding maybe decline in the rand. So there is definitely a view that rand perspective and load shedding are linked to some extent. But at the same time, on a bigger picture, we know it's like load shedding is a SA GDP story. But on the bigger picture around the world, this whole thing of inflation is appearing to be a lot more sticky, and that's an issue, isn't it?
Yeah, Robin, and I think that's what we see through the rand, as you say. We must also remember the rand's always an scapegoat for when we score own goals and politicians say things and etc. etc. But be it as it may, from a global perspective, we've seen it in the US, we see it in Europe. What we initially anticipated after COVID was this sharp acceleration in inflation, which happened, 20 years highs and so on. And then for it to unwind and come down quickly. So we've seen a little bit of that, but it's definitely more stickier than we thought. And then the second round effect is now kicking in, which is your sort of inflation expectation principle. So as a business owner, you need to sell your stuff. You've got cost pressures, not only locally but internationally. So yeah, the way to get your cost back is to increase your price. So there's a self-fulfilling, almost like inflation prophecy in there. Back to South Africa, yes, a weakening rand is not helping us from an inflation perspective. We had substantially high petrol price increases, and that also feeds now into the expectation principle. So suddenly my transport cost is now going up more, my travel is going up more, the business travel is going up more, what they need to get into the shops. Again, they have to hike the price of bread or the price of this or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a phenomenon that's playing out, and as long as inflation is staying high, the expectation that interest rates are going to stay high or be hiked again is now priced into the market. And that's what we've seen the last few days.
And so as much as we said there's an element of the rand weakness that's load shedding, there's also an element that is really America induced from the point of view sticky inflation. Is the Fed going to raise interest rates again? Even stronger dollar, is that right?
Correct. That's exactly the thing. So the dollar strengthened, but there's another reason behind the strength as well. There's money's flowing into the US, because if you just look at the interest rate, yes, if it's now being hiked or potentially hiked again, I'd rather have my money in a so-called safe haven environment. So yeah, funds flow from emerging markets like ourselves into the dollar strengthening, and we have to reap the unfortunate benefit of a weakening currency.
Well, let's hope the Springboks can bring us some optimism that feeds into the economics. Enjoy the World Cup. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, Willie, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.